Block 1. The first sign. For months, a mother heard her 6-year-old son repeat the same phrase every night. "My planet died, Mom. I came to warn you." At first, she thought it was just imagination. But the words kept returning night after night with the same tone of despair. And that's when Marina realized it wasn't a dream. If you like real stories that challenge science, take a moment to subscribe to the channel now, so you don't miss the next cases the world still struggles to understand. The boy's name was João. He was 6 years old, calm, curious, but there was something different in his eyes. While other children drew superheroes, he drew ruins, broken towers, dry rivers, a red sky, a landscape buried beneath dust that seemed to swallow everything. Marina, a history teacher, thought it was just imagination, but one detail caught her attention. In the corner of one of his drawings, with shaky handwriting, the boy had written, "There we breathed iron and dust. It hurt." She froze, staring at the phrase. The boy barely knew how to read. Where could he have gotten that from? Out of curiosity, she typed it into Google. What she found made her heart race. NASA research confirmed that Mars's atmosphere contains iron oxide, rust. Breathing there would be like swallowing metal and dust. Coincidence or memory? Marina closed the laptop, confused. The next morning, the boy asked another strange question. "Mom, does the sun sleep here?" "Of course it does, son. When it gets dark, it goes to the other side of the world." "There, it didn't sleep. The sky was always red." She began to write down everything her son said, every phrase, every word. Sometimes he woke up sweating, saying, "The dust is coming back. The color will change. It's starting again." One night, Marina recorded a video. João sat at the table, calmly telling what he remembered. She posted it in a mother's group, and within hours, the video went viral. Thousands of people commented. Some laughed, others were frightened. But among the messages, one stood out. A man who introduced himself as Dr. Gustavo Ramirez, astrophysicist and consultant for the Brazilian Space Agency. "Marina, I'd like to talk to your son," he wrote. "There's something in his words that worries me." The next day, she received his call. The doctor's voice was calm, analytical. "I don't want to scare the boy. I just want to understand what he's saying." The conversation took place on a Saturday afternoon. The doctor turned on a recorder. João sat beside his mother, calm and quiet. "Do you remember the place where you lived before you were born?" "Yes." "And what was it called?" "Arcan." "And where was Arcan?" "Near you, but drier. It had 2 moons. The sky was red because the air burned." The doctor leaned forward. "The air burned?" "Yes, we breathed iron and dust. The plants died first, then the rivers. We dug to find water but only found salt." Dr. Gustavo looked at Marina. "He's describing exactly the oxidation process of Martian soil. And the salt in the craters, that's real. NASA discovered it in 2008. But João went on. He picked up a pencil and began to draw. Circles, lines, triangles. He pointed to a dark spot and said, "This was the city of Halos. It was near the Great Rift. We called it the Pulse." The doctor fell silent. "There is, in fact, a gigantic rift on Mars called Valles Marineris, over 4,000 kilometers long. And the area the boy drew resembled Candor Chasma, one of its deepest regions. Days later, the astrophysicist sent the material to a colleague at the University of São Paulo. The result was astonishing. The drawings matched 83% of real images of Mars. "It can't be coincidence," said the researcher. "Either this boy has seen those images, which is unlikely, or he knows something we don't." Marina began to be contacted by journalists, curious people, and even spiritual groups, but she avoided interviews. "He doesn't understand what's happening," she said. "He just says what he feels." Still, the night stayed the same. The boy woke up sweating, whispering strange phrases. "It's going to happen again. The sky will break." One morning, at breakfast, he asked, "Mom, can Earth die too?" Marina hesitated. "No, son, of course not. That's what we said there, too." That sentence echoed in her mind for days. She started writing everything in a notebook, as if trying to decode a message. The case drew the attention of a scientific program on public TV. They decided to investigate. They filmed interviews, medical exams, and a reconstruction. They asked João to build, out of clay, the place where he used to live. He made tunnels, domes, and small vehicles, and explained, "We lived underground because the light hurt." An engineer from the ExoMars mission analyzed the images and remarked, "This type of structure is exactly what we study for future human colonies. It's impossible for a child to invent this." But the strangest part was yet to come. João began developing light sensitivity. His eyes watered in sunlight. Sometimes he coughed for no reason. During these episodes, he would say, "The air is heavy again. It's breaking." Clinical exams showed nothing abnormal, but a more detailed analysis revealed tiny metallic particles inside the boy's nostrils, microscopic traces of rust. The origin? No one could explain. Meanwhile, the original video had already surpassed 2 million views. Theories multiplied. Some said João was the reincarnation of a Martian. Others that he carried genetic memories from a lost civilization. And the skeptics, of course, said it was all coincidence. But few noticed that João never used the word Mars. He called the place Arcan, and he said that the color of the sky there was like Earth's sunset, only the sun never slept. Dr. Gustavo revisited the Viking probe archives from 1977. Among thousands of photos, he found one of the Martian horizon, a permanent sunset, exactly as the boy described. Days later, the school also reported strange behavior. During a lesson about the solar system, the teacher showed a picture of Mars. The boy raised his hand and said, "That's not quite right. The sky is lighter there, and the ground has cracks like when fire dries mud." The teacher asked where he had learned that. He said, "I didn't learn, I remembered." The case began to draw interest from scientists in Japan. Researchers from Kyoto University, specialists in consciousness and memory, invited Marina and her son for a series of tests. In a white room, they showed dozens of images, some real, some simulated. João recognized the real ones without hesitation. When they flipped one upside down, he corrected them. "It's wrong. It's upside down." The sensors recorded unusual brain activity, high-frequency waves in areas linked to long-term memory, something rare, especially in a child. The final report stated, "If this pattern is confirmed, it may represent a type of non-linear memory, something that transcends time and the body." Marina read it and said nothing. Her son was asleep, but she knew that story was far from over. And you? What would you do if your child said they remembered a planet that had already died? Comment below and share this story with someone who believes nothing happens by chance. Block 2. The first evidence. Joao's case began to move beyond the screen. What had started as a curious viral video was now attracting the attention of real scientists. Dr. Gustavo Ramirez, the astrophysicist who had interviewed him, decided to investigate further. "There's something different about this boy," he said. "This isn't just imagination." Marina agreed to cooperate, but set one condition: no exposing her son. "He's just a child," she repeated. "I don't want this to turn into a spectacle." Even so, the mystery was already in the air, and the more they tried to ignore it, the more evidence appeared. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, take a moment now so you can follow the next chapters of this investigation that's only just beginning. In the following weeks, Dr. Gustavo assembled a small team: a child psychologist, a geologist, and a linguist. They wanted to understand whether Joao was merely repeating information or accessing something he couldn't have learned on his own. The first test was simple. They showed him images of different planets: Venus, Saturn, Neptune. When Mars appeared, the boy fell silent. Then he pointed at the screen. "This one, but we called it Arcan." Dr. Gustavo asked what he remembered from there. It was beautiful before it died. There were trees, but they dried up. The water started to disappear, and the air got heavy. Then, everything broke. Everything broke? The sky cracked, and the wind carried the air away. The psychologist observed quietly. The way the boy spoke, calm, deliberate, firm, didn't sound like a story made up by a child. His descriptions were coherent, far too technical for his age. In the days that followed, they tested Joel's visual memory. They showed him photos of the Martian surface captured by recent probes. In one of them, the boy pointed to a specific area. That was the city of Halos. According to NASA maps, the location he indicated was in the Candor Phasma region, exactly where he had drawn it weeks earlier. Dr. Gustavo sent the video session to colleagues at the European Space Agency. The reply came 2 days later. What this child describes matches real formations in the central region of Valles Marineris. Coincidence or memory? Meanwhile, Joao's behavior began to change. He spent hours staring at the sky, watching the sunset. Sometimes he whispered softly, "It looks the same." Marina tried to keep their routine normal, but fear began to creep in. News stories about the case multiplied, and the more she tried to protect her son, the more curious people appeared. Some even knocked on her door asking to see the boy from Mars. She began turning off her phone at night. One morning, during breakfast, Joao asked Marina, "Mom, why don't you listen to the planet?" "What do you mean, listen, son?" "It talks. I still hear Arcan crying." Marina was speechless. The boy said he could hear a low sound, like wind, even in complete silence. Dr. Gustavo asked permission to bring him to the lab. "I want to understand what he's hearing," he said. There, they placed headphones on him and performed inaudible sound tests, different frequencies, both short and long waves. Joao reacted precisely when the tone matched a vibration recorded by the Perseverance rover in 2021, the sound frequency of Martian wind. Dr. Gustavo was stunned. He recognized the sound recorded 225 million kilometers from Earth. Days later, Marina noticed something even stranger. Her son began drawing symbols. They looked like letters, but from an unknown language. When she asked what it was, he replied, "It's the names of the people there. We used to write with light." The linguist analyzed the markings. They didn't belong to any known alphabet, but showed rhythmic repetitions like phonetic patterns. "It's a logical structure," she explained. "Someone taught him this, or he's remembering something he once knew." That same week, the school contacted Marina. During a science class, Joao corrected the teacher. She was showing a slide about Mars. The boy raised his hand and said, "The ground isn't like that. It's more cracked."
When the heat rose, the soil opened and fire came from underneath. The class laughed, but the teacher, curious, did some research and discovered that Mars does have underground fissures that release heated gas exactly as the boy had described. Marina began to realize this wasn't just coincidence. It was a pattern impossible to ignore. Dr. Gustavo decided to document everything. He compiled a report with videos, transcripts, and test results. The document was sent to universities in 3 countries: Japan, Germany, and the United States. 2 laboratories responded with interest. The first, in Kyoto, proposed a series of neurological tests to study the boy's memory. The second, in Boston, suggested something even bolder: a monitored regression session using brain sensors. Marina refused the idea. He's a child, not an experiment. But she agreed to non-invasive exams, and that's when the strangest discovery of all appeared. While the boy spoke about Arcan, the monitors recorded spikes of activity in areas of the brain linked to deep memory, regions that, according to doctors, shouldn't be that developed in a child. In addition, his heart rate changed every time he mentioned the word dust. Dr. Gustavo noted everything down. "There's an authentic emotional response," he said. "He feels what he says." At the end of the session, João asked, "Do you believe me now?" The doctor hesitated. I believe you've seen something. I didn't see it. I lived it." That sentence changed everything. From that moment on, João's case stopped being just a scientific curiosity. It began to be treated as a possible record of extra-biological memory, something that could challenge the very definition of what it means to exist. The newspaper started calling him the boy from Mars, but he insisted, "It's not Mars, it's Arcan." For Marina, the label didn't matter. What frightened her was her son's gaze. At times he seemed far away, as if looking beyond time itself. One night, before falling asleep, João said something she would never forget. "Mom, there we also tried to warn them, but no one listened." Marina held his hand and asked him softly, "Warn them about what, son?" "That the heir was going to die." Silence. She couldn't answer. And you? Would you believe it if your child said something like that? Comment below and share this video with someone who also feels that some memories don't come from this life.
Block 3. The Revelations. The case was already out of control. João's video was everywhere, on social media, news portals, even television programs. Marina tried to keep her son away from the spotlight, but the more she hid, the more people appeared with questions, and she had no answers. Dr. Gustavo decided to stop the interviews and protect the family, but he couldn't stop thinking about the boy's words. "There, we tried to warn them, but no one listened." Warn them about what? If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now, so you can follow every new revelation in this story that's only just beginning. The astrophysicist started reviewing the records, recordings, drawings, notes. In one of the tapes, he noticed something curious. João spoke of a blue light that tore the sky before the planet died. It came from above, he said. It was beautiful, but it killed the air. To Gustavo, it sounded like a child's imagination. But one coincidence stood out. In 2021, NASA detected an unusual radiation on the Martian surface, electromagnetic pulses that no one could explain. The same pulses the boy had called the pulse. The scientist decided to test João once more. He showed him images captured by orbiting probes, mixed with fake photos. Without hesitation, João pointed to one. That was Halos, the first city to fall. "Fall how?" asked Gustavo. "The ground broke, the heat rose, and then the wind took everything away." The description was eerily similar to a tectonic collapse, a phenomenon that, in theory, doesn't exist on Mars. But the boys seemed to know details even scientists couldn't confirm. Days later, during another session, Juan began drawing something different. Not cities, but bodies. Lines of people covered in red dust, all wearing masks on their faces. It was like this before the end, he explained. We couldn't breathe anymore. Marina couldn't hold back her tears. Why do you remember that, son? Because I was the last one. The silence that followed was suffocating. Dr. Gustavo turned off the recorder. He no longer knew if he was studying a scientific phenomenon or something spiritual. The news spread even further. Some claimed Juan was living proof of reincarnation. Others said it was all invention, but no one could explain the accuracy of the details. The Japanese team from Kyoto University, who had previously studied the boy, returned to Brazil. This time, they wanted to test his neurological reactions to sounds and images related to space. They used real recordings from the Viking and Perseverance missions, noises captured on the Martian surface. As soon as the sound began, Juan opened his eyes and murmured, "That's the wind from Arcan." The monitors showed immediate spikes in brain activity, as if the boy recognized something deeply familiar. "He reacts like someone who remembers," said the Japanese neurologist, "not like someone who imagines." Gustavo was increasingly convinced that the child was accessing authentic memories. But memories from where? From another life? Another world? Or a possible future? The questions began to trouble even the scientists. The doctor consulted a NASA colleague, a geobiology specialist. He showed him the boy's drawings. The man stared silently, then said, "These structures look like fossilized bacterial formations we found on Mars, except he drew them around houses." It was as if Juan mixed biological memories with human ones, something impossible for any adult, let alone a child. Meanwhile, Marina tried to keep life normal. But her son spoke more and more about going back. He said, "One day they'll call me again, when the sky changes color." She tried to hide her fear. "You're not going anywhere, Juan." He smiled. "I'll go when the dust comes." Dr. Gustavo began investigating weather patterns related to the boy's words, and he found something disturbing. That same week, NASA had released new images of Martian dust storms, the largest in nearly 20 years. Coincidence or connection? In the lab, they began comparing Juan's accounts with scientific data. Almost everything matched. The two moons, the salt in the craters, the sky's constant hue, and the sound of the wind recorded in 2018, identical to what Juan claimed to hear in his dreams. Gradually, the idea of an impossible memory began to take shape, a type of recollection not born in the brain, but in consciousness itself, as if the human mind could carry records from other existences. For Marina, it had no name. It was simply her life turning into a mystery, and the fear that her son would be remembered more for the enigma than for the childhood he was losing. But no one knew Juan's memories were about to change. One night, he woke up screaming, "Wake up, Mom! The sky opened again!" She ran into the room. The boy was sweating, trembling, pointing toward the window where moonlight slipped through the curtains. "It's the same, just like when it began to end." Marina tried to calm him. "It was just a dream, my love." "No, Mom, it was the same glow, the blue light." The next morning, he was silent. He spent the day drawing overlapping circles. In the center, a spiral. When Dr. Gustavo saw it, he froze. It was identical to the magnetic pattern NASA had recorded as the source of Mars's global dust storms. How could he know this? The scientist asked. This data hasn't even been released. From that moment, the case stopped being a curiosity. It became an official investigation. Researchers began to suggest that João might carry residual memory, a kind of echo between consciousnesses separated by time and space. But for the boy himself, he said something else. It's not an echo, it's a calling. And what if that calling wasn't just a memory? What if it was a warning? In Marina's last recording, João looked at the camera and said, "We made the same mistake there. We used everything, dried out the air. Now it's starting here." Dr. Gustavo watched the video dozens of times. Every word seemed to carry a prophetic weight. What if the boy wasn't speaking of the past, but of Earth's future? Marina tried to protect her son from further exposure, but it was too late. The images had spread everywhere. The whole world knew João, the boy who remembered a dead planet. And you? Do you believe that some memories don't belong to this life? Comment below and share this story with someone who also feels that time can keep the memory of the impossible.
Block 4. The Encounter with the Truth. After the last recording, João's case reached proportions no one could have imagined. Researchers, journalists, and curious minds all wanted to understand who that boy was. But behind the public fascination, something far more serious was happening. Dr. Gustavo had begun noticing patterns that could no longer be ignored. The boy's statements matched scientific data that hadn't even been released yet. And what intrigued him most was the way João spoke. He didn't tell a story. He remembered it. If you believe the truth always finds a way to surface, subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the next chapters of this investigation the world is still trying to explain. In the following days, the doctor gathered a smaller, discreet team. He wanted to protect the boy from exposure, but also needed to understand how deep this went. They analyzed João's earliest drawings and found a geometric pattern within the lines. Circles, triangles, intersections, all aligned in an exact proportion. The same ratio used in magnetic energy models. "He's not drawing randomly," said the team's engineer. "These forms follow precise mathematical logic." Gustavo decided to compare João's drawings to real maps of Mars. The result was chilling. Some of the marks coincided with regions where NASA had detected electromagnetic fluctuations, areas known as magnetic field anomalies. How could a child possibly know that? That night, the scientist wrote in his journal, "Either we're witnessing the greatest coincidence in history, or a memory that transcends time in the body." Meanwhile, Marina tried to keep her son away from further recordings. But João seemed increasingly aware of what he carried inside. One afternoon, he stopped eating and asked, "Mom, if the air here dies, where will we go?" She froze. "What do you mean, dies?" "Just like in Arcan, when the air gets heavy, the fire comes." The boy's words began to terrify her. She went to see Dr. Gustavo for help. "I don't know if he's remembering or predicting." The scientist took a deep breath. "Marina, sometimes the line between memory and premonition is thinner than we think." They decided to arrange another meeting, but this time for a different purpose. They wanted to see if João would recognize something on Earth's surface, something that could connect Arcan's memories to our planet. The team took the boy to an observatory in the countryside of São Paulo. It was nighttime. The sky was clear. When the telescope was pointed toward Mars, João remained silent for a few seconds, then whispered, "There's still light." Gustavo noted it down.
What kind of light, Juan? The same one that started everything. The blue light. It's still pulsing. The next morning, the scientist reviewed data captured by space agencies, and he found something unsettling. That same night, the reconnaissance orbiter had recorded an unusual blue-tinged electromagnetic pulse in Mars's southern hemisphere. The coincidence left the entire team speechless. How could the boy know something detected millions of kilometers away? From that point forward, the investigation changed direction. They were no longer trying to prove whether Juan was telling the truth. They wanted to understand what connected him to that planet. The next round of tests was conducted in total secrecy. This time, Juan would be monitored while he slept. During the night, his brain waves displayed a new pattern. At one point, the frequencies began to synchronize with an external magnetic pulse, the exact same rhythm recorded in transmissions coming from Mars. "He's in resonance," said the Japanese researcher. "With what?" asked Gustavo. "With the planet." The next morning, the boy woke up frightened. "They called me again," he said. "Who, Juan?" "The ones who stayed. They want me to warn you." A chill ran through the room. "Warn us about what?" asked the doctor. "The air is changing, just like before." Silence. Gustavo looked at Marina. Neither of them knew what to say. In the following days, Juan started drawing again. But now his images showed Earth. Cities covered in dust, dry rivers, broken towers under a blood-red sky. When the doctor asked what those scenes were, the boy answered, "It's what comes next." The scientist began cross-referencing global climate data with Juan's words, and what he found was terrifying. In several parts of the planet, the levels of iron particles in the atmosphere were rising, the same composition that, according to Juan, had destroyed Arcan. Marina refused further testing. She took her son home and tried to resume a normal life, but the boy seemed distant. He spent hours gazing at the sky, murmuring phrases no one understood. One afternoon, he said, "Mom, the sky is starting to look the same." "The same how?" "It's turning red." Marina looked out the window. It was just a sunset, but the color, it was exactly like his drawings. That night, she called Dr. Gustavo. She said, "I think he's predicting something." The scientist was silent. "Marina, maybe he's remembering a cycle. What happened there could happen here." From that day on, they spoke daily. They compared weather data, atmospheric readings, and Juan's dreams, and what they found seemed impossible. On every night the boy mentioned the blue light, satellites registered small magnetic fluctuations, always above the same region of Mars. It was as if something or someone was still trying to communicate. One early morning, the boy woke up crying. "The light came back," he said. "It's coming here." Marina ran to his room and hugged him. "It was just a dream." "No, Mom, it's the warning. I felt the air breaking again." The next morning, Dr. Gustavo received an urgent message from a NASA colleague. "You need to see this." It was a new field reading. For the first time, a faint blue magnetic pulse had been detected, not on Mars, but in Earth's orbit. The scientist stared at the report, remembering the boy's words. "The blue light comes when the air starts to die." Coincidence? Or the beginning of something no one wanted to believe? And you? Do you believe the universe tries to warn us before everything repeats itself? Comment below and share this video with someone who also feels that our planet's story might only be beginning.
Block 5. The Legacy of Arcan. After the discovery of the blue pulse in Earth's orbit, nothing was the same. Joel's words were no longer just memories. They had become a warning. What was once dismissed as fantasy was now making scientists question the future itself. Dr. Gustavo spent days analyzing the data.
The pulse frequency was identical to the one recorded on Mars shortly before the great dust storms. The same phenomenon the boy described as the beginning of the end. If you've made it this far, make sure to subscribe to the channel now so you can follow the next investigations into cases science still can't explain. While the media speculated, Marina shut herself off from the world. She turned off her phone, stopped answering journalists, and withdrew Joao from school. "No more exposure," she said. "I just want him to have peace." But Joao seemed restless, his eyes distant, as if he were hearing something no one else could. One quiet afternoon, he asked for a notebook and began to draw. He traced circles, lines, and symbols, the same ones from months earlier, but now all interconnected. In the center, he wrote a single sentence: "The air will break again." Marina felt her body freeze. "Son, what is this?" "It's what will happen here if no one listens." She took the drawings to Dr. Gustavo. The scientist studied them carefully. Each shape represented a region of the planet, and the central point, marked by a blue spiral, matched exactly the location of the magnetic anomaly detected in Earth's atmosphere. Gustavo didn't want to believe it, but coincidences were turning into evidence. He contacted colleagues at the European Space Agency. Days later, confirmation arrived. A series of electromagnetic pulses was indeed being detected over the South Atlantic. "It's impossible," said the chief engineer, "but the data is here." Meanwhile, Joao's condition worsened. His headaches grew stronger, and he said he could feel the wind of Arcan inside his chest. Marina tried to calm him, but the boy seemed to hear voices. "They're talking, Mum." "Who, Joao?" "The ones who stayed." Dr. Gustavo began to suspect a connection between the boy's body and the emissions captured from space. He installed a small electromagnetic field monitor in Joao's room, and the impossible happened. Every time Joao said he could hear the blue light, the device registered subtle fluctuations in the field around him. "He's tuned in," said the doctor, stunned. "Tuned into what?" asked Marina. "To something we don't understand yet." The recordings were sent to international laboratories. Some scientists suggested it might be a psychophysical phenomenon, an interaction between consciousness and environment. Others insisted Joao was merely a living coincidence, but no one could explain the magnetic pattern that always followed his words. One night, while everyone slept, the boy awoke and walked to the window. The sky was covered with clouds, but a bluish glow seemed to pulse behind them. Marina found him standing there, staring out. "Son, what are you seeing?" "They've arrived." The next morning, newspapers around the world reported an unusual magnetic storm in the atmosphere. Waves of energy interfered with satellites, disrupted communications, and caused auroras visible even in Brazil, the same lights Joao had described weeks earlier. Gustavo stayed up all night. He compared the storm's frequencies with the old recordings. The result was terrifying. The pattern was identical to the pulse of Arcan. It's the same signal, the very one the boy remembered. But Joao was weak now. High fever, short breaths. "The air is heavy," he whispered. "It's the same." Doctors found nothing wrong. No infection, no virus. His body was healthy, but drained as if it had lived far beyond its 6 years. Marina stayed by his side constantly. One night, Joao held her hand and said, "Mom, when the air breaks again, look at the sky. You'll see the same light." She cried, shaking her head. "Don't say that, my love. You're going to be fine." He smiled softly. "I already was once. Now, it's your turn."
The next morning, he fell into a deep sleep. For 48 hours, he didn't wake. The sensors around his bed recorded faint field oscillations, the same rhythm as the blue light. Then, silence. The boy did not survive. The news spread quickly. João, the boy who remembered another planet, dies at 6. But Dr. Gustavo knew that wasn't the end. That very night, satellites captured a new pulse coming from the direction of Mars. 3 signals, in perfect intervals, matching the rhythm of a human heartbeat. "It's impossible," said the scientist, but the data was undeniable. Days later, Marina received a package. It was Dr. Gustavo's journal. Inside, a letter read, "If what we witnessed is real, João isn't gone. He's gone back to where it all began." She kept the notebook and eventually returned to teaching. But at night, sometimes she looked up at the sky and saw that same reddish hue her son had described, the same distant glow, the same warning. Years passed, and electromagnetic anomalies continued to be recorded, always at the same frequency, always at the same time, 3:17 a.m., the hour when João used to wake up saying, "My planet died, Mom." Dr. Gustavo devoted the rest of his career to studying the case. He published papers, reports, and held conferences. None of them explained what truly happened, but in one of his last interviews, he said something that stayed with everyone. Maybe the universe doesn't destroy its worlds. Maybe it remakes them and sends someone back to remember what was lost. The João case, or the Arcan case as it became known, was officially archived years later. But even today, scientists and spiritualists still debate whether the boy was a coincidence or a messenger. Marina never sought fame. She kept all the drawings, all the recordings, and placed a note inside the box. "If the sky ever changes color, look for him. João will know what to do." And on nights when the sunset turns too red, some say you can hear a distant sound, a soft whisper, like wind brushing through ancient dust, the same sound a child once described as the last breath of a planet. And you? Do you believe some souls return not to remember, but to warn? Comment below and share this story with someone who also feels that the universe speaks to those who know how to listen.